So I'm not going to tell you how, sorry, Chris, but we're going to be talking about when, and particularly not when to register, but when to sell your units. And the answer is right now. Unfortunately, the government's created some weird incentive structures with the new HST rebates, such that there's a fantastic rebate that could be worth over $100,000 to a potential purchaser, but the property must be sold before March 31st, 2027. That's not a lot of time from now. It sometimes feels like 2027, so futuristic. No, that's not a lot of time from now. I think we're at 10 months, which is not a lot of time to plan out and sell a project. So I'm going to try to convey as much as I can about what you need to know before you go into pre-sales of a condo project. Before I start, this is who I am and where I work. Ben Singer, I'm over at Schneider Ruggiero, Spencer Milburn. We do all things real estate, so subdivision development, land acquisitions, construction loans, private lending, really anything you need as an investor or as a real estate developer, we're here to help. So I've broken it down to 5 categories of things you need to know before you're considering launching a pre-sale project for your missing middle condo. First thing is that you must register with HCRA and Tarion. If you take nothing else from today, because frankly the other 4 slides can be sort of carried by the professionals who are there to help you, but you have to be registered with HCRA, that's the Home Construction Regulatory Authority. They license every builder and every vendor of a new home. So even if you are working with a licensed builder who's done projects before through HCRA, the vendor, whoever's selling the project, has to be registered as well. And because it's a condominium and the Condominium Act requires the declarant to be the one to sell, really whoever owns the land is who has to register with HCRA. So registration is something done by the entity, not by project. So you can go get a registration and use the same entity for multiple projects, but every single project needs to be enrolled with Tarion. At the pre-sale stage, you're talking about something called qualification for enrollment. Essentially, Tarion looks at your project, looks at what you're proposing, and decides whether or not they're willing to warrant both the deposits at the outset and then the actual end product at the end of the day. So if you have questions about details, there's Q&A later or shoot me an email, but that's the basic idea. Make sure you learn about and register with HCRA before you start doing any kind of marketing or sales of a condo project, and then get qualification for enrollment with Tarion. If you start selling, you come up with any kind of an agreement, you start taking deposits other than potential reservation deposits, sort of gray area, but you do anything without that, you are breaking the law, it is illegal, and they will come after you with an iron fist and a rage the likes of which you've never seen before. I know I sound like I'm joking, but in all seriousness, with sort of the housing market decline and sort of the paper tiger companies that have been pre-selling, say, without permission and sort of weaseling their way in the system, a lot of things have collapsed, people have lost their deposits, and Tarion is really taking enforcement seriously. So keep that in mind before you do anything. It's really a question of going to HCRA, getting your registration, going to Tarion, and getting qualification for enrollment. Okay, who do you need? Your team before you start pre-selling. Essentially, these 6 individuals or company service providers, you absolutely, I think, need a planner, especially if it's your first project, to work with you through the condo application process. Essentially, they're the one translating your project into what the city cares about. You need a lawyer, sorry, but you do. We'll prepare your sales documentation. We'll keep you hopefully on the right path as far as compliance and work with the land registry office to actually set up the end condo. But for the pre-sale, the important part, the really important part that the lawyer will play is essentially before you get issued qualification for enrollment with Tarion, they are going to review your purchase agreement. It has to be compliant with their forms, using their addendum, things like that. And they're also going to review your mandatory disclosure statement to make sure that what you're promising purchasers essentially makes sense to them and they're willing to warrant it. Surveyor, absolutely crucial component of your project. They're mapping out what the condo is, because really a condo is a bunch of boxes that somebody owns and then a bunch of, say, not necessarily the most boxy shapes that people share. That's it. That's all it is. It's units and common elements. and your surveyor is the one who draws those lines on a map that eventually become what your condo is. You do need, and technically you can get around this, but I do think you need a property manager to help you with the pre-sale process. The reason is one of the main disclosure items that you're giving a purchaser is what the condo's eventual budget will be. And that can be hard to predict, what the condo is actually going to need to pay for. And if you don't disclose this properly, you can end up on the hook both for first year common expenses, but also potentially long-term costs to the purchaser for not accounting for line items. So making sure you have someone who's experienced in condominium development and can help advise you on things like, what kind of insurance do I need for the condo? What kind of services are needed here? What sort of ongoing costs that maybe I didn't really think through that if I was developing this as a landlord, I would just absorb. What kind of costs do I need to account for? You absolutely need a real estate agent. That's who's going to sell. But in the pre-sale stage, even before you go to market, that's who's going to help talk you through all the decisions that you need to make. There's a somewhat silly but somewhat important line item that the government mandates is in every disclosure statement. It's talking about pets. Are pets permitted or are pets not permitted? I don't know whether pets should be permitted or not. Personally, I'm kind of a dog guy. We don't have a dog. Like, I'm okay with them, okay being around them. My eldest daughter, terrified of them. So I might be more attracted to a building that prohibits pets, just for that reason, to accommodate her specifically. The second kid loves dogs, so it's a bit of a conflict in the house. But this is all to say, your real estate agent is the person who's going to speak for the purchaser in the development process and help you make decisions like that. And finally, as part of your team, you do need an architect or an engineer. Now, a lot of buildings can be built under Part 9 of the building code, meaning you can get away for building permit applications with an architectural technologist. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, the architectural technologist cannot sign off on the declaration and on the final build for Condo Act purposes, meaning there's got to be one on the team, and ideally on the team as early as possible. So, you do need a draft sales package. This is going to go to Tarian, but then again, it will also be going to your purchasers. So the sales package is divided into two. There's the agreement of purchase and sale, which was what you're promising your purchasers, and there's the, as on an individual contract basis, and the disclosure, which is what you are promising everybody, what the whole condo is going to be like. So again, we can break down these things more in depth, maybe during the Q&A, but I'm running low on time, and I'm trying to respect that 10-minute time limit. So, things to keep in mind, special rules for pre-sales. The first is every new condo sale, so whether it's a pre-sale or not, it is conditional for 10 days. This can be a problem when you only have 4 or 6 units to sell. So it is something to keep in mind, especially when dealing with purchasers. You want to make sure that they are as serious as possible and they're not just sort of sussing out the market, because they do have 10 days to put down a deposit and they can get it right back if on day 9, for any reason, they say don't like it. If you want to get out of the deal early, there are only set vendor conditions that are permitted. So as an example, you can use a pre-sale condition to say that I can only, I can exit the I can exit this agreement if I don't sell 3/4 of the units. Now it's in a 4-plex 3 units. Hopefully you can make those sales, but if you can't and the project won't work without pre-sales, you can exit. Deposits have to be held in trust, and they do earn interest. So keeping that in mind is part of your budget, but also keeping in mind that they can be released if you insure them. We talked about liability for the first year budget. You can insert into your agreement adjustments that can raise or lower the purchase price as conditions change. And the actual date is not something that you just set on your own. It's governed by Tarian's rules for their addendum. Finally, there are 2 closings to keep in mind. One is when the unit is ready for occupancy, you can complete an interim occupancy closing where the purchaser gets to live in the unit, but they don't actually own it. And then at the end of the day, the final closing, and that's when they actually take title, they get their mortgage, they pay you out in full. Interim occupancy is permitted once you have your occupancy permits or your building permit is closed if it's not a big enough building to issue occupancy permits. And final closing is usually about 30 days after you finally registered. So in your planning process, keeping those 2 dates in mind, you start getting some revenue in on a statutory formula for interim occupancy, and you only get your actual money out at final closing. So that's it. 10 minutes on the nose. Wow, I'm good.